Marks here.
Nothing quiets down a room like recording in progress. I don't know why. Okay, we're heading back here. The Zoomers should all be popping on the screen in just another moment or two here, another few seconds. Welcome back, everyone. I think you all could see me way back here. I'm going to pass the virtual mic over to Roshi Joshin, who will be doing the honors of introducing this morning's speaker.
Yes, we are really delighted and happy to have Osho Zenju Earthlyn Manuel here with us this morning. She is a Zen teacher, a Zen priest, a gifted poet, and author of many evocative books on Zen and Buddhism. And her most recent book she published was Opening to Darkness, 8 Gateways for Being with the Absence of Light in Unsettling Times. Zenju draws from many traditions, such as Native American and African indigenous traditions. She is a medicine woman of the drum. And I was joking with Kelly earlier that if I went on to tell you all her accomplishments, there'd be no time for her to speak to us this morning. So what is striking about Zenju is I think she needs no titles. She has such a deep and clear voice that speaks to all of us. It is a voice for our time. It is a voice for those who don't have a voice. And we are really honored to have Osho Zenju Earthlyn Manuel share her gifts with us this morning. Zenju? Zenju, you're muted.
All right, let's start all over again. Technology. I want to thank you, Roshi Joshin, for the introduction and for inviting me, and to thank Roshi June as well. I'm so glad I finally made it here. There's been a few times I've tried to come to your Sangha and things have happened. Things are still happening, so I just came anyway this time. I'm used to calling Roshi Joshin Robert, and because I remember, because I just want to bring that in, because I love calling him Roshi Joshin because that's who he is and who he is to me. But I remember the gentleness and care and tenderness, and when I worked at a Buddhist Peace Fellowship, and my encounters, and felt like I had a friend in the room all the time. I always felt that, and I don't think he knew that. So I want that to be said and put out, that was really important. It's not taken for granted. I love that he talked about titles because they really drive me crazy. And, I wasn't carrying any titles. When you get ordained, they immediately call you Reverend most times. And that's true. You're of reverence. But it would confuse many Black people who thought I was a Baptist minister. So Reverend didn't quite work for a Black person in Zen. Then I went to Sensei, and then that was, I was told later that was for people who are masters of a martial art. So it's like, okay. It just keeps going. So then I was told Osho. And then I was like, okay, so we all know, many of us know this one person, teacher that calls themselves Osho. And so a lot of people don't like that title, Osho, because they don't want to be related to this very kind of infamous or famous teacher. I don't know which way it is. I don't know this person. And but Osho is actually, which means teacher, is probably the most proper, if we're going to use anything. So like when you're chanting the ancestors, you'll hear in the chant, Dai Osho, great teacher. So it's already in the chant, it's already established that Osho is teacher in Zen. So Dai Osho Shunryu Suzuki Roshi. So when we all pass the teachers, it's Dai Osho, And so right now it's just Osho. So I'm not a great teacher until I'm dead. So good luck. Anyway. So you're going to really get to know me. It seems like the more darkness I get in my life, the more I laugh, the more I for some reason, get more joyful. And so let's talk about what that might be. And I want to let you know that I'm still in the portal, a grief portal of having lost my partner of 23 years. She died in November. And so a lot of tears are still inside. So, if I spontaneously emote, don't get nervous. It's part of it. And I also had a major surgery right after the funeral. So I'm still recovering from surgery as well. So this is darkness in its greatest existence. I in the book I talk about daikoku. I don't know if you ran across that word yet, daikoku. And daikoku means great darkness. Koku is darkness. Dai, great, as Dai Osho. Daikoku, K-O-K-U. And associated with Daikoku in many temples, I won't say many, a few temples in Japan, they do speak of Daikoku, and they talk about Mahakali and Mahakali as dark goddesses. So they call it, I think Mahakali is Daikoku Tenyo, and Mahalakali, the male god, is just Daikoku. So it's very much a part of our practice to look into darkness and to explore it, which is, all of my writings are explorations. I have no intentions of telling people how to live their lives, so I don't say that. If you feel that way, I'm sorry. That's not my intention. I really feel we find our own way on our own paths in reality. Whether we're all practicing Zen or not. So it's not my intentions there. So I began writing this book in the middle of the pandemic of 2020. And at the height of that pandemic was the beginning of anti-Blackness. And that's when George Floyd died. And I said, well, isn't this interesting that there's an increase, not only in anti-Blackness, but just anti, right? Anything that a group of people you could find. And I found that profound, given that we were all dying, for that to rise at a time when we were already, everyone's life was threatened, no matter what, in who you were, what your race was, your heritage, where you lived, it didn't matter at all. So I found that interesting, and I wanted to stop and explore the darkness of our lives and how it interweaves and influences how we respond and engage darkness. And so if you haven't found it out yet, how many people have been reading the book? I know you're studying it, so just a little show of hand. Yeah, you don't have to have read the whole book because it's very dense and very long. So I don't expect that of any. And I was telling a friend of mine, I said, you do know your family and friends do not read your book, so don't get upset. And that's okay. You have to. You just have to be with that. And so, and it's not for everyone. Everything is not for everyone. So when I began to look at darkness and exploring it in the midst of the pandemic, it just became really clear that there was an ingrained distortion around how we see darkness and how we see light. And that we also feel very adept and powerful in creating light, but yet we don't know really what light is. And what we are creating, we don't know what that is. We just have an idea of it. So we all have some definition of light. We all have some definition of dark. So in the book, I wanted to really explore, and actually the exploration happened long before the book, but when I started writing about it, I began to notice that what if we were to look at darkness as itself, like its own human condition, its own state of mind, its own beingness, without bringing in light as the opposite or the juxtaposition of darkness or anything, as if light didn't exist at all. Even that word didn't exist. And I found it very interesting. First, it was difficult, like, okay, this is going to be a 20-page book because I really can't write about all that. But I kept exploring it anyway, because I was speechless around how do you hold darkness without this longing for light, looking for light, praising light over darkness. And how does that interact with our perceptions and ideas of dark experiences, dark matters, dark things, dark people, dark, period? How does how we think about darkness interfere with that? Or overlay our perception and engagement with darkness. So I start out in most of the talks I've been doing to let people know that I love being in the dark. I like, the dark forest. I like these things. And I'm purposely not speaking from that end of darkness. So a lot of people, well, I'm open to darkness. And and I'm sure some of us are, a lot of us, some people would not go into a dark forest. Some people would be afraid of that. So anyway, I'm writing about darkness at the crossroad of how we suffer. So it's where you suffer darkness. In this talk and in the book, it's where I'm meeting the topic so that we can know that the joy of darkness is not excluded, but it's not where I'm landing on this exploration. All right. So I came to many, I'll say road stops, I guess, or places on the road. And it was, darkness is persistent. Darkness is pervasive. Darkness is all the time. It doesn't really go anywhere. And I think that notion doesn't make us too happy. A lot of us like, oh, this is like forever. And it reminded me like when I was in my early 20s, I think I was like 21 or something, 22. And I said, things kept happening in my life. Of course, more things happen when you become an adult because now you're on your own. People aren't saving you anymore. And they're looking for you to get up on your own 2 feet and all these kinds of things. And you don't know how. So things start happening. And I remember looking up and going, so this is what it means to be an adult. This is not going to be fun. There's always something going on and it's not fun. This is not fun. And so I would look for fun. I would look for other things to do. I felt trapped by life because everything was happening. Life was really happening. And things didn't feel good to me. Life did not feel good. And I think most human beings run into this stop on the road. Life does not feel good. And so I'm like, okay, how am I going to live this thing I don't really like? How I'm going to be here, So I remember joining and becoming a practitioner in the Nichiren tradition, where they chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. That's what people know that they chant, but also it's chanted and studied at great length is the Lotus Sutra. And it's a powerful sutra. If you haven't, looked at that sutra, look at it. It's a very powerful and inclusive sutra that was written. Nichiren himself was a Zen priest. He was ordained in Zen and then became and decided and proclaimed his own Buddhahood and changed his name from his Zen name to Nichiren. So I found that out later after I came into Zen that he was in fact a Zen priest before Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, the mantra he created, came through. So anyway, in Nichiren, the first thing I run into was I'm complaining about my life. La 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 la. This is happening, and I'm waiting for all the sympathy because when we're talking about these things, we really embellish it, and especially if we don't see in their face that they're feeling the misery we're trying to get across. So we like, okay, I got to make this really felt, and I was really going for it. And the teacher, she said, "Congratulations." And I had never, ever experienced anything like that, in my complaining. In therapy, they didn't say congratulations. They started talking, let's work this out. It was nothing about working nothing out. And I was like, well, maybe she didn't understand me, So I went to continue to tell her, like, you're not getting this. And I think I was talking about a roommate or something I had. And then she said, you're very arrogant. And I was like, well, this is getting worse. This is not, she really is not here. Me, I'm arrogant. I'm such a sweet person. How could I be arrogant? And so how dare you tell me I am? I mean, I would like, life was getting worse. And as I'm speaking to this teacher in Buddhism, and I was like, and she goes on, she said, you're arrogant because you think you're right. You think you know this roommate. You think you're not her. You have nothing that is like her, And I was like, well, I'm not. That's why I'm trying to tell, I was really confused by this. I'm not like her. She's a horrible person, the things she does in the house and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So I really didn't get it. I went home. I was so discombobulated and like, wow, that was the worst experience I ever had with someone who's supposed to be helping me. And I really began to sit with it. I played around with this person in my mind, this person in about the arrogance and why was this person saying congratulations to me? And as time went by, I did a little chart about the person, her characteristics that I didn't like. I wrote them out. Actually, I wrote words out, and then I wrote on one side of the paper. On the other side of the paper, I wrote the characteristics, you know, of myself. But I didn't get very far because the characteristics of her were exactly the same as me. That just blew my mind more. I was just like her. I was just like this person who was my roommate. Of course, that's why I chose her, right? Remember, we choose people we think that are like us, and then all of a sudden, they're not like us. They're not like us. In fact, they're so far from us, we can't believe it. So that's what I was experiencing. So this whole notion of congratulations started to come to mind because what she was saying was you are starting to see into life through this experience and struggle with what you think is the other person. You know, they don't tell you all of that initially. They just send you on your way, get to work. And so I did. Luckily, I had the capacity to do that. Same thing happened in one of my first dokusans with an abbot. Okay, I'm still complaining. This is like 15 years later. I'm still complaining about life. And he too says something like, it was like congratulations again. I said, oh no, we're back at congratulations. And, and it's a whole different tradition, you know, in a whole nother decade. And he says, congratulations, you have a life, you are living. That life is full of these experiences. And so to me, that is the darkness. That is the darkness. That is the darkness. And opening to life as this way in which things continue to occur. Like we're continually given, you know, more mud, let's say. Let's say we're all in this, you know, we already know the mud and the lotus, but we're always thinking of ourselves as the lotus, right? You know, we like that mud part. We can ignore that part, that the mud's there. And so that's why we keep going in and we're shocked when someone says congratulations. You know, what? There's all this mud here. And so it's just really messy. It doesn't feel good. I don't like it, you know. So when the mud gets low, and we really like that time when the mud's low, nothing's happening, we're kicking back, we're watching movies, we're going out having a good time. Someone was talking about pizza, made me hungry. So I really like pizza. And I was like, you know, we started enjoying it. All of a sudden, there's like the pool fills up again with mud. And you're like, oh, well, wait a minute. I'm this lotus flower. I got to work my way out of here. You know, I got to get out. I need some light. That's what everybody was doing in the pandemic. I got to get out. This got to be over. How long is this going to last? Oh, my God. We were afraid. We were so afraid. We were so afraid. We were unable to look into what is the darkness asking of us. We were unable to use the darkness. It was just mud. It was messy. We couldn't, You know, we began to hate people or run away from people and do all kinds of things. We realized how we needed other people and how much we needed them. Or some of us were maybe non-people person and realized how antisocial we really were. how it was a good time to be alone for us. But I could see people suffering because they wanted to get out so bad. They wanted to get out of the pandemic, out of the killings, out of everything that was going on. We wanted out of the government, who was running the government. We wanted to get away from them, some of us. Not everyone, but some of us. We want it out. And so when we want out, we create this thing called an escape hatch, a door, and in that door, there's light. At the door, there's light. What if we go through that door and it's just a rush of fire? It's so light, we go right there and poof, we burn up. I think we come to our practices someday. We come to our practices. We come to a Zen center looking for water. We open the door and it's nothing but fire. Oh my God, this is really intense. I got to go find something that's a little bit more comfortable, a lot more happiness, a little more singing, maybe dancing, something a little bit different. So then you go to that place and then all of a sudden you run into that door of fire. There's always a door of fire. There's always something that's going to be combustive for you, some kind of friction that will cause some fire. So I said, this is the practice. This is that practice of really sitting. That's why we sit in this place that's inward, this place that's dark. We sit in it, not trying to get anything out of it, but we're in it. And in it, we're not looking, we're just in it. We're just breathing. And maybe things will come up in our mind while we're doing that. All kinds of things. If you go on a sesshin, eventually, probably day 5, you start trembling because you realize you're going to die. So that usually happens day 5 or 6. Usually day 1, you're like, ooh, it's so nice to get away from the family, from my work, from this, from that. This feels so good. Can't wait till lunch. What are we having for lunch? It's just like, ooh, this is nice. Day 2, it's like, ooh, what's the Dharma Talk going to be about? Ooh, Day 3, it's like, what day is it? Oh, I love that, being lost and not knowing what day it is. Day 4, you're like, I'm really tired of thinking about that argument I had with so-and-so. I'm really tired. All of a sudden, all the dark experiences. Suddenly, you're like starting to sink into this mud. You're just getting deeper and deeper. It's called cooking, right? Zen will cook you. That mud's hot. It has no air in it. You got to get out. When is this sesshin over? Let me check the date. What day are we on? I wonder if I should go home. I think I've had enough. I've been through so many. It happens all the time. You would think when I go to one now, I would know what's going to happen, but no. Same thing happens over and over and over again. Human condition. So I'm asking in this book and in the study of darkness and opening to it is to consider it without light, to consider it without seeking comfort, without and trusting that the comfort will come. Because sometimes we think if we don't seek it, we're not going to get it. We're not going to have any comfort. So we better go and find it. Because, it's not going to happen. And I have to do this for myself, so I'm going to go do this. We might even do this in our relationships with each other. I'm going to make sure there's a happy point, because if I'm going to be here, I need a happy point. I need a happy door, a place where I could be happy, I could be comfortable, and then while you're thinking about the darkness and exploring that, also think about the ways in which you have been thriving, how you have been growing, how you have walked. Sometimes people say walk the coals, the fight hot coals, that you have done that and that you're doing it right now. Oh yes, Zenju has lost a partner, but so have I. And I remember that time. Zenju has had surgery, so have I. And I remember, I know what that means. I know I can relate to Zenju suffering, And so imagine all that, how it brings such interrelationship. You didn't think it would, but today it did. And in this moment it did. And it's an awareness of ourselves as human beings, and an awareness of our interrelationship that occurs in the midst of darkness. And I'm sure of that. I'm sure of it. And I'm so sure that because of the darkness, because of troubled times, unsettling times, that we are transformed by it. Not to call it in, because it's coming anyway. I said the other day, racism will end. It will, right? If we go along with what arises, will cease. You may not be the person to do that, super person, to end it. But it will end, and guess what? Something else will take its place. Because that is the nature of life. That there is fodder, there is mud, there is something that must be there to shake us loose of what we think of ourselves and how we engage with each other. Now, whether that engagement involves love is up to us, but we still can just look at how we get engaged with each other or not in the darkness. Now, a lot of people blame this topic on me because I was born on Halloween at night, but that may be true. I don't know. I'm not an astrologist, but it may be true. And I'm happy about that. I'm not happy to suffer. I'm not happy that darkness is so difficult and so hard on us. But I'm happy that darkness exists. Now, I would not have said that when I was talking to the Nichiren teacher early on in my practice, or to the abbot later in Zen. This was explored within me through the years of practice. Walking and suffering, walking and suffering, walking and suffering, walking and suffering. And I remember the year, I don't have the name of the year, really, I don't even know what the number is, but I remember when suffering still existed, but it was not center stage for me. It was not in the center stage place. It was just there. And that was a real turn for me because I could still feel it. And the emotions and everything around it was still there. But it had not become the way in which I moved in life. It wasn't the motivation behind my actions, the motivation behind my speech, my mind, my thinking, the motivation around what my body did, what actions I took in life. Suffering wasn't the motivation. It used to be. And not having that pulled me out of the place of social activism in the way the world did it, the way the world sees social activism. Because I do feel I'm a social activist, but not motivated by suffering. Not moved into action by that, but moved into action by the evolution of my exploration of suffering. It's a bit wider, more expansive, and you only can feel that in your body. It's hard to decipher in the mind. So that's why we talk about karma a lot. That's what karma is, right? Action. And then there's results for those actions. And so in the book, I'm working at changing some of these results. Not for you or for me, but just saying I'm going to invoking that and then not doing it, allowing it to happen on its own. That's not easy to do because so many of us want to engage on everything at every level. And we're driving ourselves crazy. We're exhausted. In the dark, you are no longer all-knowing. Oh boy, that's our favorite thing. We like to know. In the dark, you are no longer all-knowing. We didn't know anything in the pandemic or during the killings. We just didn't know anything, but we all talked as if we knew everything. Everybody was talking about it. And I said, how can you talk about something when we don't know even what's going on in our own humanity? In the dark, you are no longer all-knowing. You are undone. Undone. To be undone is what sets you in place for opening to darkness. I'm undone. I'm totally undone right now. I'm undone. I've been undone. I'm just more undone. I have been undone from the day I was born. Probably when I came through, like, what? I'm undone. Oh man, am I undone? And why are we undone? What is it? This is life. We are to be undone. And there's no getting around it. Unless you take life into your own hands in a way that you hope you wouldn't, or others hope you wouldn't cease living by your own hand. Life gets disrupted. We are thrown off and we face the unimaginable. It's sobering. Now I understand why, like elders, I didn't have any grandparents because my father was 60 when I was born, and my mother was 42. And she was 45 when she had her last child. So I didn't have any grandparents, But I did watch them because they became, even though they were my parents, they were my grandparents too because of their age. And I didn't know how they were facing the unimaginable as elders. I didn't understand that. We were all kids. When my mother was hitting menopause, we're like 5 years old. 5, 8. Little kids. And my mother's hitting menopause. And so I think one thing that eldership brings is this real baptism, what I say, in darkness, that is so deep and so can be overwhelming, that from it, I believe this is where you either become the wise elder or just older. Just older. Elder or older, which one? And so I could see my father was very much an elder. My mother was older. She was smart though. She had a lot of wisdom, but she was older because she was wrought. She didn't know what to do with all of the suffering she had gone through. And I'm talking about people born in the turn of the 19th, 18th, 19th, 20th century. Because my father was born in 1898 and my mother was born in 1910 in rural Louisiana. I can't even imagine it. And then they come into the 20th century, and live well into it, the amount of darkness in their lives. To be undone, I call it a mystical occurrence. Why? It's a state of being in which we are rendered eyes open to the unknown. We see, hear, smell, taste, think, and can do nothing about it. All doing is done. What we are to do when we feel lost. What are we to do when we feel lost, a stranger in our own lives? We go through it. And in the undoing of life, silence stretches into eternity, revealing stars in the dark. And so I call it mystical and magical because it's occurring anyway. So how can we use this magic? How can we make it a friend, a partner? Some people say befriend. Oh, I don't want to befriend darkness. I told a neighbor I was writing this book, and she was like, oh no, I'm not opening the darkness. And I think that those who pick this book up and take this journey for a minute, even if you don't keep on this journey, pretty brave. You're pretty brave. So I forgot to ask before I got started how Q&A is done and when it's done. So I'm going to stop for a moment. And if there's Q&A, if it happens, how it happens, I don't know. So we're going to stumble through this. And if it's just 15 minutes, I just want to stop somebody, guide me here. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Osho. We would love, I think, to have some Q&A here at this time. That was just so thought-provoking. That was just so wonderful to hear you speak on your book and your experiences. I'll ask those online. You can go ahead and unmute if you have a comment or reaction question. And those in the room here, I'll move the microphone around for you. Just raise a hand. Yeah. Yeah, we have someone here.
Okay. Someone in the room. Okay.
Hello, Osho. I have been studying this book for the past maybe 4 or 5 months, and it has been a life-changing experience for me to read your words. So I'm profoundly grateful for your wisdom and your sharing of this wisdom. My question is, in one of the chapters you talk about the cards, the oracle cards, and the experience of making those, and how in the writing you over the course of time, you put down the responsibility of being an oracle and made the words the oracle, or the bearer of the wisdom. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that. How your work is so deeply original, and it just has shook me in all these liberating ways. Can you talk a little bit about how this wisdom has come to you?
I really don't have an answer of how it came to me. And for those who haven't gotten to that part of the book or not reading it yet, but I had a lucid dream, and through that lucid dream came forth this oracle. I didn't have that word for it. Or, it was a deck of cards I made it into a deck of cards. It had a lot of messages and artwork, and I had never done any artwork. And the messages, I just thought it was something I was supposed to go by. So I called a friend of mine who I considered her a person who was in a whole lot of things I wasn't, which at that time I would call woo-woo stuff. And so I would call her. I called her and said, can you tell me where to go get these Black Angel cards? And she said, what are you talking about? There's no such a thing as those. And I was like, that's like really interesting. And I hung up the phone. Still friends with this person 30 years later. And I realized something had come through me in my sleep, and I really didn't have any intentions of publishing anything. It just people kept asking me when I would share the gift to publish it, and I didn't notice people were having experiences as I was sharing. So I feel it felt like something out of a movie. I didn't talk to anybody about it. I said this couldn't have possibly happened to me, and but then I realized it did. It had come through. So I'm Buddhist. I'm seven years into practicing Buddhism, and I'm so actually the angel cards were my first Dharma book. Whether people see it as that, that is it. That was it. And I realized as I began to study more about Buddhist life, and that he had 4 lucid dreams in which the 4 noble truths came out of. 4 noble truths was just one of those lucid dreams he had. He had 4 of them. And I do remember the one about the pillow. Everybody likes the one about the pillow and reaching into the dark, and the pillow was the earth. And the one about the caste system, which his intention was to end it, the caste system. And then the other one were these truths. And so then there was a 4th one. But the Buddha himself was a lucid dreamer. So when I discovered that, I said, oh, okay, this is why it's coming into my Buddhist practice. And then later I realized that most of the Zen priests in the more ancient times, I imagine, were seers. And that's why people came. They were mediums. And that's why people came to see them. So how we go to Dokusan and practice discussion, that was a place of mediumship in which the priests would use, because they had the power from having sat and walked the path so long, to be able to see for the people. So the people didn't go out and try to learn to see for themselves. You would go to a priest to do that. This is very much the way indigenous practices are. You go to the shaman who sees, what you want to know. And so when the Zen priest stopped doing that, that kind of changed Zen a lot, I imagine. In Japan, at least, that's what I heard as a story. So I can tell you, I think I just uncovered in my own life an ancient way of being a Zen priest. I didn't know I was going to be a Zen priest when the angel cards came about, but something ancient came through me and still coming through me. I believe. I think it's coming through all of us if we're aware of what it is, when it comes. Because it took me many, many years. I mean, even when people were saying what had happened, I still tried to deny it, because the intellectual and the material is more believable in this world. So, so even when people go into looking at meditation in a scientific way, I think that that's a good thing for people who need to know concretely how something is happening, but we're not supposed to know all of it, because there is we will never know all of it. There is an unseen aspect of life and of living, and I think that might be the reason we don't know death. We don't know it, and it's a good thing that we don't really know it. There's just so much we don't even know really how we got here. We know technically how we got here, but we don't know how we got here. And we don't know what we are doing here. And to not try to find out, so the shaman will never tell you. Never. Why? Because they don't know either. They will take you into the unknown. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Robert Roshi Joshi.
Boy, I'm undone by your talk. I don't think I've ever heard a Dharma talk like this before, and I'm not going to forget it. The idea of darkness without the word light it's just, you know, it's hard to wrap my head around it. It's like a koan, I guess.
Mhm.
I was wondering if you could, in your book, you have these archetypes that seem to come from African culture that were strange to me. And yet, because they were archetypes, they felt familiar in some way. And that was odd to me. And I wonder if you could
Great.
talk a little bit about how you came to those archetypes, because they're very, very deep and powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for asking about it. In all of the months I've been going around, everyone skirts around that part. I think it makes them nervous. I have made an overlay of those spirits in the book, or goddess, whatever word you want to use, of dark mother. So when I started looking into darkness and dark work, especially in the Tibetan world, they do dark work. They actually have dark retreats, right? And they do a lot around death and, you know, through their rituals and ceremonies. And I said, oh my God, I'm Tibetan. And so, but anyway, you know, it doesn't matter, right? So it's going to come. Whatever's supposed to come to you is going to come. And so anyway, when I went to look at the dark mothers that are normally used, I won't say normally, that are traditionally talked about mostly in the Tibetan tradition, which are very powerful. I didn't want to do that because I'm not a Tibetan practitioner, so I didn't want to bring them in. But I'm also not a Wudon practitioner, but I'm guided by, and this just happened, 3 Mambos came into my life. I didn't go after find them, they came to me. They found me. And so in some ways, I was connected to a Wudon, and I remember sitting at breakfast with a friend and with my teacher, Zenke Blanche Hartman, and some friends. We were having breakfast, and one of the friends said, and it's sometimes I say things to people I don't mean for them to repeat, but a friend repeated this. She said, Zenju, didn't you say that Wudon is very much like Zen? And I almost choked on my eggs because my teacher's sitting there like, oh no, this is just for you. And like, how am I going to explain this? And so, and I just kind of put my food down and said, yes, I feel that, Wudon, even the word means being, you know, awakening and being aware. That's what it means, the word itself, and being in your beingness. So when I saw, when I was doing the book, all of these various different orishas, goddess, spirits, whatever words you want to use, came to me. And I think they're the ones that I have always made sense for me in my life when I studied them, but only not as a practitioner, but only through Mambos and only through my work that I've done. And so I'm glad you felt something akin to your life, because what you felt is the universality of them, which is what I was hoping people would realize. And then when I thought of dark mothers, I said, let's go to the dark continent. Let's go to the dark continent, because this is pre-Buddhism, pre-Buddha. So dark mothers are the ones who walk, as I say a lot in the book, with sword and flowers, you know. And so the things that are happening in the world are usually created, they say, by dark mothers. So it was interesting to find that these different spirits had the same elements as the one of the dark mothers in the Tibetan world. And who knows, maybe that was borrowed in the Tibetan world from the African world, since it existed first in Africa. And so I thought to just bring it, since it was something that I studied and seemed to be in my life, even though I'm not a practitioner of Wudon. It's in my life. It's in my DNA somewhere. And so it was to bring a different resonance, maybe, to further create being undone. Oh no, this Buddhist teacher has Buddha spirits in her book. And that's why everybody skips it. You're the first, you're so brave. Thank you. You almost brought tears to my eyes. You're the first one that's ever asked. Thank you. Hope that helps. I wish we could be here all day, but I can't. Yeah.
Osho, I would just like to say that I really appreciated your guided stillness that you included at each of the chapters. I was really moved by how grounding that was, and so lovely combined with the imagery, like the Mama Black Panther, for instance, like walking through the wild wilderness with her was such just a moving experience for me. I'm so grateful to you for that. And in that chapter, you mentioned that I think you said something like, it is so rare to really find a wild human, and was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit. Like, it brings up some of that for me in that sitting in that darkness.
Mm-hmm. Good. Thank you for that. Yes, we've lost our wild selves. The majority of people on the planet have lost that. We've lost that. I don't know if we can return to it. I don't think we've lost everything of it, because we are human beings. There will be an evolution toward having to go back to those instincts as we lose land. Water's taking over a lot of land now because of climate change. Climate change will bring us back to that wild self eventually. The ones are here today, us, we may not be here for it, but it is happening, and we will go back. And we will have to maybe live underground, crawl back into that hole we came out of, or something, wherever we were doing, And so I think this is something that's inside of us that I was trying to shake loose in that chapter with the panther, and considered like the panther an animal that I have related to all my life, because my mother used to have them in the house all the time. Remember, and I think in the 50s they had these ceramic panthers. A lot of people, at least the black people, did in their house. I have one right here. I'm gonna just reach over and see if I can get it, because I never stopped collecting them.
Yes.
Remember these?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so I still have them, some of them, and if I saw one, I probably, just drop dead from fear in the middle. But there's something about, the presence of them, and I'm glad that chapter is one of my favorite ones. Can we smell, taste, hear darkness, so that we can have remove ourselves from what we've learned about darkness, and it's going to be a journey. I did a 5-day retreat with all Black people on darkness not too long ago. And soon as it was over, one of the students said, I needed to get out of all that black. Okay, the retreat was over, so I didn't investigate. But it was interesting to hear. And what did that mean? I mean, I've had people tell me, why are you all wearing all that black? And they say it like that, all that black. And what is that? And how does that transfer into how you deal with your own dark experiences, dark matters, dark people, dark everything? Everything dark. It affects everything.
Thank you. I think we're about at time, but just want to give anyone else an opportunity, a last thought, question, comment. So appreciative, Osho Zenju, for you being here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ninjo. I really, I could feel what you were talking about in my body. My body was shaking as you were speaking. It was so beautiful. And I tried to order your book in little old Penzance here, and they told me they're all out of stock, so they had to order some more.
Good. Good. Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for trembling. It makes me tremble too. It does. I trembled through the whole writing of the book. I did. And I wasn't sure if it should be published. After I wrote it, I was like, well, I held on to the advance, and I said to make sure that, and I do this with all my books, I pretty much hold on to the advance until I realize that the book is actually coming out, just in case. It says, no, don't do this, but it never does. So far, it hasn't done it. But I'm open to people letting me know you shouldn't have written that book. I am open to that as well. I am. So.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you
All right,
so
thank
much.
So much.
Those of you here in person, please join us for some refreshments and kinship hour. Thank you, Zoomers, for being here with us today. Thank you, Osho
Thank
Zenju.
you.
Thank you very much. Thank
Hear you
you.
this morning. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Deep bows.